different, places within the galaxy.
Uh-huh.
Part of the Orion group, I think we're just a collection of this thing, and through, through the years we've, interbred, and and there are threads of this stuff like the Tower of Babel, where essentially, the races were divided, and where you have, literally where the Earth was originally more, it was this pure Adamic race, and then you had this Babylonian Tower of Babel, where essentially everything was dispersed, and then there was an opening where all these different, people from other planets came here. I've been wondering, as far as the explanation, as far as the various different races, which is part of the thread. Are these Martians? Are these Andromedas? Are what are these? And that's what my explanation is. The other thing too is that we haven't even talked about is the interdimensional aspect of all this stuff too, and that is, that's science is actually proving that there are these interdimensions. There are parallel universes.
Oh yeah.
And the wormholes, and that's how a lot of these species come in and out of here. And they know where these wormholes are, and these intertwined dimensionals, and they travel freely. They have the technology where they can literally, go, gazillion miles of light years. Where if we were to try to do it, through a rocket, we'd all be dead. But by the time we'd be a rotting carcass. So yeah, I think that there is that. I think we're seeded. I really do. I think we're seeded. And I think that there's been some people say that the ruling class is more Martian, right now, which contends that to mean that we're like Martian, species, and that's what's ruling the day. That the more benevolent things are from other species of ours, or from other places. I don't know, but it's just pure conjecture. But I don't know. But it's some of the stuff I thought about.
Well, I was watching a little documentary on the Science Channel that they came up with this theory that they can use like a radio wave and like slingshot it and create like some sort of like wormhole, like a tiny microscopic wormhole, and slingshot it.
No,
that's
funny you bring it up because
galaxy.
I do. I didn't see this segment, but I've heard of that. And in my uncle's book, he talked about how through vibrational waves that they actually can speak to you here on Earth, and they call it an ediphone. And they get around the mechanism is an ediphone, which is a vibratory device, and they transmit an omni beam, which seems so science fiction-ish, et cetera, et cetera. But those are his words. I had that happen to me. Literally, where I was, I was, as a little kid, I was on top of my grandmother's trailer, and I was up in the sky out in the middle of the desert. And I said, "Hey, if there's a God," and I think I believe I was 6 years old. I said, "Call my name," and all of a sudden I hear my name like a trumpet coming out of the sky, and I jumped off the trailer and I ran into my grandmother's bed, and I was completely freaked out. I had a very interesting childhood. I was just open to all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
But my uncle actually told about. In fact, on one of our trailers, we got that in. My uncle told me about this, and you got to remember. I mean, from the ages of and a lot of this is my recollection, and then I go back and he wrote several books, on the various subjects as far as that, which I have. In fact, I've got all his channeling tapes too, where he's channeling. So lots of information I've just been reviewing. I heard it once, and it was an explanation as far as that. I've been in. It's uncanny how telepathic that if you're open, you're a channel, and you'll get information, and it'll become from a lot of peculiar places. One of the things I saw this gigantic rainbow ship that was the size of 2 to 3 football lengths. And my uncle had actually visited me a dream and told me to go up the mountains to go watch for it. I did. I went up there, but I didn't see it. As I came down, I saw this gigantic rainbow ship with rainbow colors. It was amazing. Okay. Well, I had this premonition, through this dream, and I had this message, and I saw this. And, so I go to the news. I go to the news. This is in Utah at the time. I go to the news, and this guy, announcer goes, "Oh yes, our switchboards have been inundated with calls about sighting. There's been over thousands of calls of the sighting of this giant rainbow ship that was coming around there." And he says, "Scientists say sometimes rainbows move in this direction." Well, rainbows don't move in that direction. Rainbows are not a spaceship completely around moving, slowly down the Utah Valley. It doesn't work that way. But then here's the other flip side of that thing. I just said, well, I wonder what my uncle had to say. So I grabbed one of the books I had, and I opened up and I just opened the book up, and he explained in detail about the rainbow people and the rainbow ships and what they look like. And so, call it it's serendipitous. I mean, you call it luck, call it whatever. But I've had all these events that happen, and so again, it's just what it is. But the name of the announcer, the guy was Dick Norris, and his scientists say that oftentimes rainbows actually do. Well, everyone knows that rainbows go from one part of the earth, you can see them, and go to the other earth. They don't do that.
They don't.
So it's always like, So we're living in this almost surreal world, and the amazing thing, I'm happy to share my experiences. In fact, part of the book and part of what I'm doing, I've often known that what I'm doing is more than a book, and it's more than a movie. This is basically trying to make people aware of not only my story but other stories. I've done a couple other interviewed extensively other people to get their statement and story on record, because I think that's really important. Even though, who knows? I mean, maybe Gary, maybe you're right. We'll be a part of Burger King's main menu tomorrow. I don't know. But at least,
I feel sorry for them if they eat me. I'll tell you that.
Right. But the bottom line is that I'm not going to go and buy it. I mean, the other thing too is I'm not going to be shouted out, and I'm not going to, and I think that if and I appreciate you sharing your experience, Gary, with your New Mexico sighting. It always takes courage to come out, and I think more and more people, once they start realizing, in fact, the amount of people that have actually had experiences, if I talk to them long enough, and they're comfortable with it, I always hear of an experience. I always hear of a direct sighting that they were too ashamed, or were not confident enough, or thought it might have been a satellite, or might have been this or that. And it's funny. The longer, it's kind of like an act of remembering, and I think that is really what is most important, for all of us to really act and to remember that what we're doing, So, but that's what I do. That's the reason why I do what I do.
Oh, I just want to say something too. I vaguely got to know, like, the last year. I actually talked to James Gardner back when he was doing the Rockford Files. I was young.
Okay.
I made some phone calls, and they actually put me on the phone with him, and I talked to him a couple times. But the last year he was alive, he didn't know how to operate a computer. But he had a friend that, would get together with him, and I would get messages back and forth from James Gardner. And I asked him about that one movie he was in where, the abduction, and I don't want to go too much in it, but I asked him,
Fire in the Sky.
Right, that's it. I didn't want to say it, but thank you for saying it. I asked him, I said, did you believe the story of what they said? And he said it was more to it, but they couldn't put it on film. And he said he believes that, yes, there are UFOs and abductions was going on. And, he just didn't want to talk about it because he had a career.
Oh, yeah. yeah. In fact, Travis Walton, he said, he says it's a great movie. It wasn't his movie.
Yeah.
He's out there too, and he had mentioned that, and I've had other people too mention, you got to be careful as far as this, so I've been really careful as far as creative control. I mean, they're not going to, and it's not about the money thing, granted, it's about getting the story out the way that I envisioned it versus what Hollywood thinks, and of course with what their ego. I mean, there's so much of a story here. I mean, it's the who's who of ufology. It's a part of American history, Americana, that literally I don't, unless you've seen this thing through my eyes, and what I mentioned tonight is just a brief snapshot as far as it. I mean, some of the events that actually have occurred are so extraordinary, and some extraordinarily beautiful too. That have given me this view and this of how things are done and what this is, that I am very, very careful. So unless someone's pretty much on a similar wavelength, I'm not going to just hand this over to any director who wants to turn this into the Transformer 15 or whatever. And so because it's number one, it's not necessary. And I think people are really thirsting for something.
They want to know. They want to know. A lot of people out there want to know what is real.
Yep. So this is something that, most of the stuff is documented. A lot of stuff you can go on the internet and you can really get a good. It's amazing. If you type in Giant Rock, as far as a brand goes, Giant Rock the movie. I think it's about Google. There's about 100 million hits. Imprints on that. It's a huge brand. There's more money than people could imagine. With this thing as far as on the branding of Giant Rock, just because basically it's based on a true story. It's based on real people, based on real events. So, what do you want to watch? Yeah.
Hey, one more quick. Kevin wants to ask you a question. Then I'm gonna.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not really a question. I found your book on Amazon. It's Giant Rock. You can also find it on our website, www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. So if you click on our website, you can also find it. You can also find his book on our website. Sorry for cutting you off.
Oh, nice.
That's fine.
Great.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Hey, now.
Thanks.
We got like about 4 minutes left. The first thing I want to ask you is we didn't even touch a fourth of what you have to say. So I want to invite you back on the show and the next whenever you're free, for we can continue on and go to the part 2 of this.
Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
great.
You got about 3.5 minutes left. Why don't you tell people where they can get your book, and anything else you want to say? You got 3 minutes. Just go ahead and use it.
Well, yeah. Okay. First of all, number one, I'm always interested in other people who have actually had experiences with alien abduction, and there's twofold. Number one, if you need help or want to talk to anybody about that, I've taken the same tradition as my uncle has. I talk to anybody about this. So if you need to talk to somebody, my uncle used to counsel every military pilot and every commercial pilot in the world, about this, because generally they couldn't handle the information, and he had enough information to be helpful. So that was something. So I've continued that kind of as a family thing. So you can reach me at chad@giantrockthemovie.com, and more than happy. And also too, if you're willing to get on film. We have a crew and we have cameras. I'd like to hear your story, and two, I'm always looking for people that have actually had these things here. So that's a second thing too. So if you'd be willing to do that, that'd be fantastic.
Oh, great.
We have trailers out there that kind of give an on the net. I have a YouTube Giant Rock Movie YouTube channel. You can go look at some of the stuff. Also, there's a little segment called The Real Truthers, where we actually have filmed people and telling their stories, so you can kind of get a view of that. So, and that's really important to take a look at that. And as far as the other thing too is that the work we're doing, we need help. I mean, we need help.